This is the oldest generation. I will be interviewing my grandpa. So let's get started. First question. How was communication for you as a younger kid or a teenager related to how to get somewhere, hang out with friends, or be with family?
It was very different. Most houses just had one phone, and that was shared by the family.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little harder to hang out with your friends. You had to sometimes wait your turn to get on the phone, and when you called someone's house, the phone might be busy because someone else was on it. They hadn't invented call waiting yet. So when you did get through, then you could plan things, but it was mostly like what time you're going to go over to someone's house or pick them up or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But it was tougher. If you were out and about, you had to think about using the payphone.
Mm-hmm.
They did have plenty of payphones around to use, but it was harder to find somebody. If you went shopping, you didn't have a cell phone in your pocket, so you could easily get lost if you went shopping in a big store, and then you had to just find each other. There was no using the cell phone for that. So it was quite a bit different. I guess when I was, by the time I was going to college, I still knew people that had party lines at their house where there was 3 or 4 or 6 families all had shared one number. Sometimes you would they would pick up the phone and there's someone else talking at it, and you had to wait till they were done.
Mm-hmm.
So that's very, very, very different back then.
Okay, so to you, how has phones affected this topic?
Cell phones.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's a big difference now. You can find people when you want to. You always have a phone when you go places. It's you always had to be thinking about when in the old days about when you were going to go out as a group, how you were going to get together again. You had to maybe pick a spot that you were going to get together and go by your watch or what, and so you could get together because if you got separated, whether you're at the fair or at a ball game, it could be hard to find people that you came with again. Cell phones made a big difference. By most everybody has one in their pocket now. It's good for all sorts of things, including most everybody has a camera now in their pocket. So, but we didn't have that either. Most times you didn't carry your camera around with you, but that's part of having a cell phone now. But the communication is just way different than 30 or 40 years ago. Totally different.
So, do you find cell phones being effective then?
Very.
Okay.
Very. It's it just really changes things. If you go anywhere, they say that if you go to the state fair, if you go to the mall, you can always get a hold of people and you can just get back together again. If you went to the fair and you got separated, 20 years ago, that could be hard to find each other again. You pretty much, if you didn't have a plan for that ahead of time, it would be hard to find people again. Everybody having a cell phone makes a big difference on that. And you have more than one line at your house too. You might be, in the old days with one phone, you might be third in line to use the phone when people were done talking, and then done with it, and was hard to get together with anybody, whether it was for entertainment or business things too.
So, how do you see phones being used for a future generation related to this topic?
Future. Well, it's kind of hard to guess how much better they'll get in the future, but phones have evolved a lot in the last 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely. We maybe had our first cell phone about 1996 or 97, and it was just a phone, and didn't have anything else on it, but it was handy to have. It was nice for traveling. And most people, not everybody had one back then. You'd say even 20 years ago, everybody didn't have one in their pocket or their purse. But it'll probably just get better and better. It's hard to imagine what kind of more features they could have on them, but than they do now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a huge improvement over 20 years ago and the 20 years before that even. I guess that's my answer.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome, Mac.
Okay, so this is the second generation. This is my mom. So here's the first question. How was communication for you related to when you were much younger, like a child or a teenager, to as in getting places or going somewhere or hanging out with friends? How did that work?
So when I was a kid, you would just call on the landline phone and hope that they were home and leave messages with parents, grandparents, siblings, hoping that they would give the messages to people. Sometimes you would just show up at people's houses, not knowing if they were there or not, and that wasn't a strange thing. I didn't know any different, so if you couldn't get a hold of that person, well, then you just called another person. So it was very different, but I didn't think anything of it.
So for you, how has a phone affected this?
So I was an adult when cell phones came into popularity. But even for my adult friends, I feel like it's easier to know what they're doing on a daily basis or to get a hold of them and make plans quicker. The night of, you can make plans. It just makes it very easy to know what people are doing all the time.
All right, so here's the third question. Do you find having a phone effective for this type of stuff?
For communication, yes. It's easy to communicate with my parents about family members through group chats and things of that nature. With cell phones, people have that on their body almost all the time, so even if they're out grocery shopping or things of that nature, they can answer. Whereas before, you'd have to, well, if you had an answering machine, you could leave a message for somebody, but you didn't always have an answering machine. And there was no caller ID either. So nowadays, it's just easier to know who's trying to get a hold of you, when they're trying to get a hold of you, and what they're trying to get a hold of you for.
Okay, so for the next generation, how do you see phones being used in this topic?
Definitely moving forward, kids will not know what it's like to not be able to have instant communication with people. And what was the question again?
So how do you think that phones will work in a form of communication for our upcoming generation?
Okay, yeah. So, not only will the kids not understand what it's like to not have instant communication, but I think it will actually become quicker. I think things will be developed and there will be just no wait time to find out where people are, what are they doing, and less privacy that goes along with that, I think.
All right. Thank you, Mom.
You're welcome, Mac.
Okay, so the first generation I will be talking about is the youngest. This person's name is Jacob Scott. So here's the first question. How was communication when you were younger related to, say, how you were going to get places or going somewhere or to hang out with people?
Communication growing up wasn't the easiest. I didn't have a cell phone till about 8th grade. And it was only like one of those burner phones. So the fact of having a cell phone was easier at that point, but it was pretty hard getting places and getting a hold of people without a cell phone.
Okay, so next question is, how has phone affected this in a good way or easier way or bad way?
It is definitely improved my way of getting around and my way of talking to people. Because per se, talking to a friend, it's definitely easier, and it's easier getting to school, especially if I don't have a ride in the morning. It's easier to communicate with my parents. It's easier to communicate with my sibling. So it's definitely impacted it greatly.
Do you find having phones effective at all?
Oh yeah, very effective. It has definitely changed our way of perception of speaking to each other in a positive way, even though there are negatives to it. I do believe that it has brought some positive ways to our communication and culture.
All right, so for our last question, it reads, what do you see phones being for a future generation according to this topic?
So seeing it as my generation, some kids do misuse their phone. I am on it a lot, and it's hard for me sometimes just to put it down. But with communication with people, I do believe that our future generation would probably they might have a better basis towards phones, to where there might be an easier way of them not getting in trouble so much with the phone. And hopefully at that point we would have learned our lessons with phones, especially with the way that people are able easier to send people stuff and get away with things. Hopefully that does not affect our future generation poorly.
Thank you, Jacob.